I remember the day clearly. The day everyone laughed at me. The day the so-called strongest hunters looked down at the weakest hunter alive, whispering and laughing. The day I realized the world wasn't built for people like me. It was built to break them. I was the weakest, the pawn, the one no one noticed, except to mock, to belittle, to remind me of my place. And I smiled, not because I enjoyed it. No, I felt every sting, every humiliation, but because that moment taught me something that would save me later. Silence is the weapon of the underestimated. While they shouted, I listened. While they celebrated their strength, I studied weakness. While they flexed muscles and titles, I flexed patience and resolve. The dungeon didn't care about titles. The dungeon didn't care about prestige, connections, or popularity. It only cared about survival. And I realized that day power isn't given. Power isn't earned by being seen, by performing, or by begging for acknowledgement. Power is taken, relentlessly, without witnesses. I wasn't strong, I wasn't brave, I wasn't ready. But I had one thing they didn't, one thing no monster, no dungeon, no human could ever touch. Hunger. Hunger that doesn't scream, hunger that doesn't complain, hunger that waits in the shadows unnoticed and strikes at the perfect moment. I learned early that the world is a cruel teacher. It punishes the naive. It exploits kindness. I saw it in the faces around me, the ones who claimed they were hunters, warriors, champions. They had power on paper, they had pride on display. But when the walls of a dungeon closed in, when shadows slithered across the floor, when monsters that smelled fear and weakness approached, they cracked. And I survived. Not because I was strong at first, not because I was lucky, not because the system had my back. I survived because I understood something simple and brutal. I learned to move silently through danger, to breathe while chaos screamed around me, to watch while others stumbled blindly, to strike not with emotion but with calculation. I didn't rage. I didn't panic. I didn't argue with the monsters or the world. I adapted. And every step I took, every shadow I absorbed, every pain I endured in silence, built something no laughter could touch. A strength that wasn't flashy, a force that whispered danger before it struck. Most people think strength is visible. They think it's measured by muscle, titles, or noise. But I learned that day true power is invisible until it's undeniable. Think about it. Every person who underestimated you, every friend who ignored you, every rival who laughed at your weakness, they all made the same mistake. They confused visibility with power. They confused loudness with dominance. And while they lived in their illusions, I trained in silence. Every pain became a teacher. Every failure became a blueprint. Every shadow became an ally. I remember the double dungeon. The air was thick with fear. The walls dripped with darkness. Every step forward felt like sinking deeper into chaos. They said I wouldn't survive. They said I was weak. They said the monsters would eat me before I could even lift a sword. And I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I walked forward, step by step. Measured, calculated. I chose to rise. Not for recognition. Not for applause. Not for glory. I chose to rise because weakness is fatal. Because if I didn't take power, no one else would. Because survival isn't a right, it's a conquest. And conquest demands patience. And every time I moved through the dungeon, every shadow I absorbed, every monster I defeated, I learned that power is a language the world only respects when you speak it with results, not words. Most people spend their lives begging for validation. They broadcast their pain, they advertise their effort, they expose every weakness, every hesitation, every fear. And the world devours it. It exploits it. I didn't make that mistake. I learned to hide every intention, to guard every weakness, to move in silence until the moment of action demanded it. You want a secret? The day you stop giving the world pieces of yourself is the day you start taking pieces of it. Because power isn't polite. It doesn't wait for consent. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't apologize. You take it, or you remain weak. I took my power in silence, while they laughed at me, while they judged me, while they counted me out. And in that silence I became dangerous, not celebrated, but unstoppable. People fear what they cannot predict. They fear what they cannot read. And that's exactly what I became. Unpredictable, unreadable, untouchable. The weak version of me died quietly in the shadows of a dungeon that no one wanted to survive. And the new version, hungry, calculating and dangerous, was born from the ashes of laughter and underestimation. I don't show my strength. I don't announce my victories. I don't need approval. Because real power doesn't need witnesses. It doesn't seek validation. It doesn't ask permission. It simply exists. And the moment it exists, it changes everything. I remember looking at those who mocked me, standing at the edge of a dungeon pit, eyes wide with disbelief. I smiled, not because I felt joy, not because I wanted revenge, but because I knew the truth. They had given me a gift without realizing it. Every insult, every laugh, every moment of doubt from them, it became fuel. It became the shadow I wielded silently. And the hunger The raw, unrelenting hunger to grow, to survive and dominate. That hunger isn't polite. It isn't kind. It's merciless. It's the kind of hunger that doesn't forgive weakness. Most people will never understand this. Most people will never rise because they stop listening the moment it hurts. I didn't stop. I didn't listen to their words. I didn't chase recognition. I didn't care about being seen. I only moved forward, and that's when I understood the final truth about power. It doesn't wait for courage. It doesn't wait for opportunity. It doesn't wait for permission. You take it, silently, relentlessly, without witnesses. And when you finally act, the world doesn't know what hit it. I learned that power isn't earned through popularity. It isn't gained by proving yourself to others. It isn't a reward for being nice, loyal, or visible. Power is taken by the one willing to endure the silence, to endure the laughter of the world, and keep moving. I took my power that way, and every shadow I conquered, every monster I absorbed, every dungeon I survived, was a step closer to the truth they never understood. The weakest hunter can become the strongest, if he learns to move in silence, if he learns to take power. I learned that the world isn't waiting to hand you strength. It doesn't reward effort with recognition. It doesn't protect the polite or the shy. The moment you wait for validation, the moment you seek applause for your struggles, you are already weak. I didn't wait. I didn't seek. I acted. Every dungeon I entered, every monster I faced, wasn't just a test of strength. It was a lesson in control, a lesson in focus. I felt fear. I felt doubt claw at my chest. But I didn't let any of it get into my head or my strategy. I learned to watch chaos without flinching, to move through death as if it were a shadow I could control. Power doesn't exist in brute force alone. It doesn't exist in muscle or magic or status. Power exists in the ability to endure what others can't. The weakest hunter became invisible. The pawn became the king. The hunted became the predator. And it wasn't immediate. It wasn't noticed. That is the beauty of power taken in silence. No one sees it coming. No one can prepare for it. No one can control it. I remember the first time the shadows answered me, not as servants, but as extensions of my will, as living proof that I had taken power where none was offered. The world laughed when I trained alone. It mocked my grinding, my obsession with becoming stronger. But laughter is temporary. Power is permanent. I've watched the same people who mocked me crumble when the monsters came. I've seen ego vanish under real pressure. I've seen the confident stumble when confronted with forces they didn't understand. And I moved like a shadow. I acted like someone who had already absorbed every lesson the world had to teach, through pain, rejection, and neglect. Every defeat I endured, every insult I swallowed, was transformed into fuel. Fuel for my ambition. Fuel for the kind of power that cannot be taken. I didn't seek respect. I didn't seek admiration. I didn't seek to prove myself. I sought dominance, over my fears, over my weaknesses, over every circumstance the world threw at me. And here's the truth. Most people never realize the weaker you look, the more they underestimate you, and the more underestimated you are, the easier it is to take power without interference. That's why the world's laughter became my ally. Because while they were busy mocking, I was calculating. Power isn't polite. It isn't fair. It watches. It rewards the patient and destroys the reckless. I've learned to become patient, to endure everything the world wants me to fear, to absorb every blow, every insult, every disappointment, and convert it into advantage. People think strength comes from being visible, from showing off, from proving yourself. They're wrong. Strength comes from the unseen work done when no one is watching. It comes from the silent hours spent mastering your fear, your pain, your instincts. It comes from moving while everyone else hesitates. I didn't become strong because I fought the easiest battles. I became strong because I fought the battles everyone else avoided, because I took what they refused to take. The monsters I faced weren't just beasts. They were reflections of the world. Violent, unpredictable, merciless. And I didn't just survive them, I commanded them. I transformed every threat into a resource, every danger into a tool, every shadow into an extension of my will. This is the truth about power that no one tells you. You are strongest not when you display strength, but when you are unseen, unreadable, untouchable. The world cannot hit what it cannot measure. The world cannot fear what it cannot predict. And the world cannot control what it cannot reach. I became that. The silent hunter, the invisible predator, the one they laughed at until the moment I struck. And the hunger never fades. It grows. It evolves. It drives me beyond the limits of flesh, bone, and expectation. Because power isn't a destination. It's a process. It's a shadow that follows you, consumes you, teaches you, and rewards only those who never waver. I learned to love that hunger, to embrace that pain, to move through the world unseen, silent, unstoppable. Because the moment you stop reacting, the moment you stop caring about the laughter, the moment you stop waiting for permission, That is the moment you become dangerous. Now ask yourself, are you going to stay polite and shy? Or are you willing to become dangerous?